If you have a hard time with boundaries, how might your life be different if you could say no as easily as a joyful yes? I'm Love Coach Mariya, and for over a decade now, I've been encouraging folks to empower their compassion so it's big enough for ourselves as well as others, and so our boundaries can become healthier than ever. You're listening to Empower Your Compassion, and on this show, we'll be unlocking transformative insights to help you reconnect to your true yes, so you can say no from that more expansive energy and get more of what you want in your relationships and your life without sacrificing your compassion. Are you ready for more love? Let's grow. I've always been a very growth-driven individual, and sometimes that has encouraged me to lean into certain discomforts as opportunities to grow. Eventually, though, I started discovering that there were some discomforts that I would lean into that were maybe pushing myself too far. Case in point, one time, I was going after a dream, and it had been a couple years, and I was making all of the adjustments that I could, externally and internally, to find the way to bring this dream about. And one day, after it had really cost me some things in my life, but I was still pressing ahead, it was as though I felt a tug at my pant leg. And it had been there, but finally I decided to look down and say, what is this? And it was a very quiet, sweet little part of me that just said, when do I get to be enough? Oh, it hit me hard. It took me back. It felt very heavy and real. And I had to take a step back and from this pursuit of this dream and just kind of set it down for a little while and let things be for at least a few months. But within a couple weeks, I kept reflecting on it and unpacking what was in that, what was in the drive to grow, what was in the need to accept, and how I felt about the way that those two experiences sort of interacted with each other. And one of the revelations that occurred to me as I was just kind of on a walk through a park, I thought, well, I think I'm afraid to stop pursuing growth because I have this story that if I stop growing, that I will stagnate and I'll become like one of those people who are perfectly content to do the same thing day in and day out, year after year, decade after decade. And honestly, if that's you, that's beautiful. And at this point, I actually have some envy for that. At that point, though, it was terrifying. It felt like I would become like a zombie because it wasn't my natural state. My natural state was to be growing, and stagnating felt really terrifying. What I realized, though, I remembered that change is the one consistent thing in life. Change is always happening. It's always happening around us, and there are always opportunities for change within us. And it occurred to me that while there certainly are some people who do stagnate and they don't change, but it's like an avoidance. And I realized that those people that I fear the most becoming, they're actually on some level avoiding change. They're afraid of change, and so they resist it, and they really try and keep everything the same despite the changes that are naturally occurring and happening all around all the time. And I started to see life as like a river. It's constantly bringing new opportunities, and sometimes they're wonderful, sometimes they're terrifying, but it's also bringing them away, which can be kind of sad and unfortunate when it's something that we were enjoying, and we might grip onto them as the river is trying to pull them away, and it can kind of hurt us if we grip too hard to something that is time to move on. But of course, on the flip side, when it carries away something less pleasant, we're like, bye, Felicia. So realizing that change is this constant, remembering that, rather reconnecting to that truth that change is a constant, and that the stagnation that I fear is actually a resistance to change, and acknowledging that I do like change and growth, that I'm less likely to resist change. But I realized that what I had been doing was kind of trying to force it. And epiphany, the clouds parted, the sunlight shone down, the angels sang. And I realized that all I need to do is stay open. Life will continue to provide opportunities for growth and change, and I just need to stay open to them. Be aware and observant, and also energetically open and welcoming of them, and there will be plenty of opportunities to change. I don't have to go out and force it. And that was such a relief. And it was really encouraging. And I will also tell you that to this day, I think that was 8 or 9 years ago, it's still a practice. It was so wired in me to force change that I had to do it. I had to be the one to do it. I had to make it happen. And I lost track of the truth that all creation is co-creation, whether it's with other people or entities or energies or the universe. Like, you're always in co-creation. And when we try and force things, we lose our dance partner. And I had lost track of the fact that I was dancing alone. And I still catch myself doing that from time to time. But the lesson here, to bring it all back, is that in my pursuit of growth, I was often pushing myself through discomforts that was actually kind of detrimental. So we all know that there's the comfort zone, and that growth only happens outside the comfort zone. So outside of the comfort zone, then we have the growth zone. However, there is another zone beyond that called the danger zone. Comfort zone, growth zone, danger zone. If you push yourself too fast or too far beyond your growth zone, you can traumatize or re-traumatize yourself, and not only hinder your growth, but it can be regressive. It can be damaging, and it can make it even harder to grow forward. Now, there's this tricky thing of the human mind where it favors familiarity over most things. The logic, the silly evolutionary logic there is that, if we went down this path yesterday and we didn't encounter a saber-toothed tiger, we didn't die, why venture down a new one? Like, who knows what could be down there? This one was safe. Let's stick with the safe one. It's just part of our brain's device to keep us alive. So what that ends up translating into, though, in modern day human life as an adult, whatever we grew up with as a child is what builds our familiarity. And if the environment in our developmental years was dysfunctional, our subconscious will seek to recreate that familiarity, because even though it might have been detrimental to our psyche, it didn't kill us, we're still effectively here and, relatively reproductively healthy. So we're just going to keep doing that. Again, that's the silly rationale there. So if you grew up in, say, an abusive dynamic, you are likely to subconsciously recreate abusive dynamics that feel familiar to your nervous system. All this to say that discomfort is information, and it can signal to our bodies and our minds that we need to move away from that. However, what a lot of people end up doing today, including myself, is we move towards unsafe discomfort because it's familiar, and we move away from safe discomfort because it's unfamiliar. And that can show up in a lot of different ways. But again, I was often, not always, leaning into discomfort because I thought it was good for my growth, when in reality, I had a lot of inner work to do to unpack beliefs about needing to grow to be worthy of love. So the pushing myself through discomfort was actually unsafe. That was unsafe discomfort that I was pushing myself through. Meanwhile, there were other discomforts, such as stopping, allowing myself to be lovable and acceptable as I am, which didn't match my story, and that felt uncomfortable. And that was a discomfort that I was avoiding. So I find that, there is safe discomfort and there is unsafe discomfort, and it's kind of a case-by-case basis. But in general, fear of healthy change is a form of discomfort, but it's a safe discomfort. If that's healthy change that's on the other side of it, then it is safe to be with and sort of not push through, but move through. Now, trauma that's getting reactivated is unsafe. I get a lot of people asking me, how do I know if a resistance that's coming up in me is my intuition and something I should listen to, or if it's just my trauma and something I should kind of like push through or get over? My answer to that is, if it feels like trauma, it's unsafe. You have to heal into safety with that. You can't just push through something and re-traumatize yourself. Now, there's also a discomfort with like other people's discomfort getting on you. And this comes up a lot in people pleasing. We feel like we have to fix or solve their discomfort so that we don't have to experience the discomfort of their discomfort. However, that is actually a safe discomfort. It's okay to allow other people to be uncomfortable. You can feel that discomfort and it's safe. You can, support them, be in it with them. And sometimes that alone will soften it in them and in you. And then on the extreme end, there can be an intuitive detection of real danger. Sometimes you can't put your finger on it, but there's a vibe of someone, no one else agrees with you, but you're like, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel safe, whether it's the situation or a person. If your body's telling you that it's unsafe and your mind doesn't know why, just trust it. That's unsafe. And this is all kind of tying back into the previous episode with my friend Jules, where we talked about somatics and embodiment. And I mentioned, and I'll reiterate, one of the greatest values in my estimation of learning the language of your body, learning how to come back into your body. And I say back because we used to be there when we were little, and as we grow in modern society, we detach from it. So coming back into your body and reconnecting with its intelligence and wisdom is, in my estimation, the only way to be able to discern safe discomfort from unsafe discomfort. I just kind of laid out some common distinctions, conceptually, but in any given moment, I don't think that the mind has its own strengths, and I don't think that's one of them. The body is so much better at knowing, is this intuition, or is it trauma, or is this something I should lean into and work through, or is it something I should just listen to and honor? I will also say that I think it also kind of depends on your stage in life. When we are in our early adulthood, 20s, maybe into your 30s, you're still kind of learning who you are. And I think it's actually really important to question things, question yourself, question your beliefs, question your triggers in that stage. And if you do that, if you spend a decade and a half to really taking an honest inventory of your experiences and your reactions to things and your stories and your beliefs, and questioning those things and receiving a lot of outside feedback and input as well to incorporate into your learning of yourself, I think that builds a really, really strong foundation. But I learned that it can become a habit. And after, again, several years of doing that, it's important to recognize that you are building a foundation of self-knowledge and trust. And there comes a time when we have to acknowledge, like, okay, I've completed the self-analysis and learning phase, and it's time to graduate now onto self-trust. And then you don't have to stay open to outside input anymore. You don't have to question your no anymore. You can just have that knowing in your body. And you can just say, like, this is a no for me. I don't need to know why, or maybe I do know why and I don't really feel like explaining it. It's just, this is a no for me. And I don't really need your input or your opinion or your perspective on why I might be wrong here. I know what's right for me. And again, embodiment can really help with that. And because our culture is so disconnected from the body, it can be really, really helpful to have an outside expert to guide you back into your body. It's hard. It's hard to find your way there on your own. I have worked with a few experts, masters of energetics and somatics that have really helped me reconnect to my body. And now I am my own master of my body. So I do really encourage, I think most people today have come to accept that, like, yeah, pretty much anyone would benefit from therapy. I also believe anyone and everyone will benefit from some somatic support. I also, while I'm here, want to bring in another sort of element of this. People like to talk about polarity a lot these days, masculine and feminine energy. I prefer to use the yin and yang terms because there's just so much unnecessary confusion with, gender norms. Masculine does not equal male. Feminine does not equal female. Masculine/yang energy it's very structured. It's rigid. It's really good at cognitive thinking. It's also the energy that we can transcend into spirit with as well. It's the mind, it's rationality, but most of all, it is structure. Feminine/yin energy is very fluid, and it's soft, it's chaotic, it is the body, it's nature, it's creation and destruction, and creation, like it's very creative and again, very fluid. So the ideal balance, sure, in a relationship, but also just within each of us, because we all have yin and yang energies, is for the yang to create and maintain structures for the yin to flow within. So with no structure, if I have I'm cupping my hand for those who aren't watching. If I have a handful of water, my hand is the yang structure, support, and the water is the yin. If I pour the water out on the ground, it's just going to go everywhere, and it's not going to be very effective. I mean, as water's just whatever it is, but let's say that that's creative energy. And if it just spills everywhere, it's not really going to be able to be very effective. And without the water, the cupped hand is kind of pointless as well. So they give each other purpose and meaning, and they nourish each other. So what this means in energetics is that you want to utilize your yang energy to create structures in your life that nurture your yin energy to flow and be creative and manifest and birth new life, whether it's a business or an idea or a connection between people. Like, there is so much that the yin can do when it is supported by the just loving presence of yang structure. And then the yin can really open in that safety as well and be creative and flow. So tying this back into boundaries, for me, boundaries are the supports for your alignment. And I have touched on this before, but for me, alignment is everything. I shifted away from moral judgments of things being good or bad because, the mind is always going to judge. It's always going to put things in box sets. Can I make this left turn? Yes or no? Is this burger tasty to me? Yes or no? But the moral judgments are more like, is this person a good person or a bad person? Or is this behavior a good behavior or bad behavior? And a helpful stepping stone for me was shifting it from an objective morality to a subjective morality, where I can at least say, well, this behavior is good for me versus bad for me. Like I was getting closer to alignment, but I was still judging myself because I was judging my own behavior as good or bad. And then I would sort of shame myself for doing things that were bad for me. Because there's so much weight, there's so much emotional, energetic weight behind those labels of good and bad. And so I wanted to stop shaming myself. I wanted to stop judging others, and then I wanted to stop judging myself. And so what I found was, instead of good or bad, it's aligned or misaligned. And those aren't just replacements for good or bad. Aligned doesn't mean good and misaligned doesn't mean bad. It's just information. And when I talk about alignment, the three main things that you want to be in alignment with are your values, your goals, and your limits or capacity. So if I acknowledge that something is not in alignment with my values, goals, or limits, then that's just information. Maybe one day I grab the pint of ice cream and I go in for like my 10th spoonful, and I might ask myself, like, is this aligned for me? And I might be like, nope, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that's fine, because whatever, like I said, it's just information. But that alignment is a constant fluctuating attunement, like balance. If you try and balance on your foot, there's all those micro adjustments. So we're always seeking and finding and coming into and falling out of and coming back to alignment. So that's a very, relatively speaking, a yin thing. And because boundaries are the way that we honor our limits, that's more of a yang structural support. And because we need to honor the limits of our precious resources like time, energy, attention, etc., in order to make sure that we have enough for the people and causes that we care most about. Boundaries are a service, and they support our alignment. Boundaries are the supports for your alignment. Again, all of this is energetics. It's the vibrational frequency of the atoms of existence, and it's not a concept. It's not something that the mind can like figure out. I mean, the mind can kind of comprehend it, but energy is something that we feel in our body. It's physical particles vibrating, and just like our body, it's a very material thing. And our body and our mind work together for sure. Our body, mind, spirit, all of these things are working together all the time and influencing each other and responding to each other. So all of this to say, get in your body. I feel like that's the most important thing that we can do. I learned so much on my personal growth journey through my mind, but it only got me so far. And I wasn't able to really start unlocking changes in my life until I figured out that embodiment piece. That was the missing key. And if anyone else has read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, and tried all of the things, tried to, do things differently to create change, and if you haven't been able to do that, I guarantee you the missing piece is in your body. We have to change the being that we're doing from in order to create lasting change in our life. And that comes from the body. So that is my advice, is a very foundational piece, is to unlock embodiment. Get yourself someone to help you. I'm available. Jules is available. There's lots of other folks that can help you. Get in your body, and it all kind of stems from there. So please, if you haven't already subscribed, do so. We're going to continue unpacking things. Again, I've developed the Gates method for grounding, assessing, trusting, expressing, and stewarding our precious resources. And at this point, my plan is for every other week to unpack one of those. Last week, we unpacked the G for ground, and next week we'll be getting into assessing your capacity and your true yes, because when boundaries really become liberating is when you realize that it's not just about saying no, it's about reconnecting to your true yes. And when our nervous systems are wired for our yes to be whatever your yes is, it's really, really empowering and heart-filling to reconnect to our own true yes. And boundaries just become much more effortless from there and much less scary. So I hope you'll stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for listening. I really commend you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about yourself and how you can bring more love through you and into your life. Thanks again. I send you love and courage. Namaste.